Hi, this is Gary with MACMOST.com. Let me show you how to use clipping masks in Pixelmator Pro on your Mac. MACMOST is brought to you thanks to a great group of more than 1,000 supporters. Go to MACMOST.com/Patreon. There you could read more about the Patreon campaign, join us, and get exclusive content and course discounts. So let's say you have an image and you want the image to be inside of a shape, like maybe a circle or a rounded rectangle. Well, one way to do that would be to take that image and then remove the parts outside of the image to just have that shape left in the middle. But a much easier way to do that is using a clipping mask in an app like Photoshop or, as I'm going to show you here, in Pixelmator Pro. So in Pixelmator Pro here I'm just going to open up this image, and when I open up the image directly I just get that image by itself in a layer. Watch out for if you create a new document first and then bring the image in, then you're going to have a blank layer, usually just a white field, and then the image on top. So here I've got the image all by itself. Now of course I could use the selection tool here on the right, select any area I want, hit delete, and now it's transparent right there. And if I were to do that around the outside I could get it to be a shape that I want. But a clipping mask allows you to do this in a much better way. The idea here is that you add a shape, the shape that you want the image to be into. I'm going to use the tools here on the right, the shape tool. I'm actually going to click and select a rounded rectangle. That's a good shape because it's difficult to make by removing parts outside. So I'm going to draw the rounded rectangle here. If I hold the Shift key while I'm dragging I'll get a perfect square. And let's say I want this to be the shape that I want the image to go into. So this is like a window that I'm going to see the image through. I'm going to take this and I'm going to place it over the area that I want to show through when I apply the clipping mask. So now notice I've got two layers here on the left. I've got the rounded rectangle on top and the image below it. Instead I'm going to drag the rounded rectangle below it so we can't see it anymore because it's behind it. But the idea with a clipping mask is that the bottom layer is going to be the shape and the layers above it are going to be what fits inside the shape. So now I select the layer for the image above it. I could choose Format and then Mask and then create Clipping Mask. There's a keyboard shortcut, but I like to just use the Control key or two fingers on the trackpad, right click on a mouse to bring up the context menu and say Create Clipping Mask. And then you can see here what it does with the layers is I get this little arrow here to the left pointing to the layer below it. And you can see now the image corresponds to that rounded rectangle, the clipping mask, and anything above it that has this arrow pointing down is now going to be shown using that mask. So I get this nice rounded rectangle here. I could still adjust both layers. So I could select the rounded rectangle here for instance, and I could drag one of the corners of it like that. Or I could drag one of these dots here that changes the curve of the corner. I could also select this layer here and move it around, and you can see how the image moves just fine. If I want to move the rounded rectangle itself it's difficult to do because this layer is on top and clicking and dragging is always going to grab the layer that's on top. But I could lock it like that and now it won't drag this layer but it will drag this one. So now I can move the rounded rectangle around. So now if I were to export this, all this area here would be transparent and this area here would be the only remaining visible part of the image. I could go to Image, Trim Canvas here, and then Trim Transparent Pixels. And now I've gotten rid of the rest of it and have a nice tight image that I can export and use say in a keynote presentation. I can use it in Pages. I could use it in iMovie. All sorts of different ways to use it. Now the layer here that's the clipping mask doesn't have to be a shape. I'm going to delete this layer here. That'll get rid of the clipping mask and we're back to just having the image. I could add a new empty layer and then use one of the painting tools here and draw on top like that. So this is just pixels that I'm drawing. And then I can move that below like before, select the image and then create a clipping mask. And you can see how whatever I've drawn that's what becomes the mask there. If I wanted to include multiple shapes I could draw multiple shapes like this and then maybe like that and take these two, select both layers. I'm going to Control click on them and group them together. And then I can take this group, put it below. If I create the clipping mask on the layer above you could see it treats the group as the clipping mask. So I can add more things here inside this group if I want. Likewise, if I dragged another image to another layer here, then this layer isn't part of the clipping mask. You can see it doesn't have that arrow there. I could control click it there and create clipping mask and it would add it. So now I've got this layer here and this layer here, both of these, both using the clipping mask that's below it. Another type of layer you can use as a clipping mask is text. So I can create a text layer here. I'll just create some text like this. And it doesn't actually even matter the color because it's going to just worry about whether the pixels are transparent or not. And then I can increase the size. Let's position it like that. And now if I make this layer the clipping mask like that, that's the result I get. And let's drag this around. And there we go. Here's another example. Say I've got this image here and I'm going to replace the image in this picture here. So there are a lot of ways I could do it. Let's drag in our other image here. I could trim this so it fits perfectly in this shape and then just place it on top. I could also select this in here, just cut out a rectangle and then delete it, creating a hole, and then place this behind it like that. But the problem is with both of these is I've destroyed the layers. In this case I've created this hole here and I really can't get it back very easily. If I decide to change my mind, maybe have a smaller cutout and that kind of thing. And if I trim this image, I couldn't get the pixels back if I decided to resize it as well. However, by using a clipping mask, I can do it without destroying either of these two layers. All I would need to do first is create a shape here. I'm going to use a rectangle shape. And let's zoom in here and make sure I create it right over the part of the image where there's a photo, just like that. Now I'm going to use this as the clipping mask for this layer here. So I'll do that. Now let's lock this layer so we can't move it. Lock this layer so we can't move it. And we'll just move the picture behind it. There we go. To get exactly what I want. The great thing is this image is untouched and so is this image. I've just used a clipping mask. So whatever I want to do, if I want to use a slightly different part of this image here, it's easy to adjust. If I want to adjust what part of this image seems to be cut out or overlaid with the other one, I could adjust that. I've got the most versatility here for the future by using this simple clipping mask technique instead of cutting something out. If you liked this video, click the thumbs up button below to let me know. I publish new tutorials each weekday. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out.